I still remember the exact moment my life split into before and after. It was a Thursday evening at 6:47 p.m. and I was standing in the pediatric ICU, my scrub soaked with exhaustion after a 12-hour shift. The text from Emma came through just as I was preparing my final rounds. Mom, Grandma moved our stuff to the basement. Jack's crying. My name is Amanda Mitchell, and after 15 years of building myself up from nothing, it took my own parents exactly 3 hours to show me I was worth less to them than a golden grandchild who wasn't even mine. The pediatric ward smelled of antiseptic and hope that Thursday evening, the familiar scent that had become my second home since the divorce. My fingers moved with practiced precision as I adjusted little Sophia's IV drip, her mother watching from the bedside chair with that particular brand of exhausted devotion I recognized in my own reflection. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that harsh hospital white that made time feel suspended. She's doing much better, I assured the mother, checking Sophia's chart one final time. Her fever's broken and her breathing is steady. Dr. Chen will check on her in the morning. The woman's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you, Amanda. You've been so kind. Kind. If only she knew how that word had become both my strength and my weakness. I smiled, patted her shoulder gently, and moved to the next room. 3 more patients to check before I could leave, before I could return to the house that was supposed to be our temporary sanctuary. 2 years. That's how long we'd been living with my parents, Martha and Richard, since the divorce shattered everything I'd built. 2 years of swallowing my pride, contributing every spare dollar, working extra shifts to save for our own place while raising my twins, Jack and Emma, trying to shield them from feeling like burdens. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Emma. Grandpa says Uncle Stephen's baby deserves the good rooms. My fingers curled around the phone, knuckles whitening. Stephen, my younger brother, the entrepreneur, the success story, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Since his son Ethan had been born 6 months ago, the favoritism had shifted from subtle to suffocating. Amanda, you okay? Nancy, my colleague, touched my elbow gently. You look like you've seen a ghost. Family emergency, I managed, my voice steady despite the storm building in my chest. Can you cover my last 3 patients? I'll owe you. She didn't hesitate. Go. I've got this. The drive home was 23 minutes of contained fury. My hands gripped the steering wheel as memories flooded back. Stephen getting a new car for his 16th birthday while I got a lecture about responsibility. Stephen's college fully paid while I worked 3 jobs to afford nursing school. Stephen's business ventures funded while my requests for help during the divorce were met with sighs and reminders about poor choices. The house looked the same from the outside, a 2-story colonial in a quiet suburb. The American dream my parents had achieved through my father's construction business. But I knew that inside something fundamental had shifted. I could hear Ethan crying before I even opened the door. Not the desperate wail of need, but the practiced fuss of a baby who knew attention would come immediately. Sure enough, I found my mother in the kitchen, bouncing him while Melissa, Stephen's wife, sipped tea at the granite island. Oh, Amanda, my mother said without looking up from Ethan's face. You're home early. Where are my children? My voice was ice. Melissa's perfectly manicured fingers wrapped around her mug. They're fine. We just needed to make some adjustments to the living arrangements. Adjustments. The word tasted bitter. You mean moving them to the basement? My mother finally looked at me, her expression one of practiced innocence. It's temporary. Stephen and Melissa need more space while their house is being renovated. Ethan needs a proper nursery and Melissa needs a home office. And my children need what exactly? My jaw tightened. To sleep in an unfinished basement with mold in the corners? Don't be dramatic, my mother dismissed, shifting Ethan to her other hip. We put their beds down there, added some lamps. They'll adapt. Adapt. There it was. My children were expected to adapt, to sacrifice, to make themselves smaller, while Ethan expanded to fill every available space. The back door opened, and my father entered with Stephen, both carrying bags from the expensive baby boutique downtown. Stephen's face held that particular expression of entitlement I'd known since childhood, the slight lift of his chin, the casual dismissal in his eyes. Amanda, he acknowledged, setting down a bag containing what looked like a $300 baby monitor. Didn't expect you home so soon. My children texted me that their belongings had been moved to the basement without anyone consulting me. Stephen shrugged, a gesture so casual it made my blood burn. We needed the upstairs rooms. Ethan's getting mobile. He needs proper space to develop. And Jack and Emma don't? They're older, my father interjected, his tone suggesting the conversation was already over. They can handle it. Family means making sacrifices. Family. The word hung in the air like a challenge. I looked at the 4 adults who had made this decision without me, who had decided my children's worth without consultation. My mother cooing over Ethan, my father already dismissing my concerns, Stephen checking his phone with bored indifference, and Melissa studying her tea as if it held profound secrets. Jack has asthma, I said quietly. The basement is damp. There's visible mold in the southeast corner, one small window that doesn't even open properly. You're overreacting, Stephen said, not even looking up from his phone. Kids are resilient. Something inside me shifted like tectonic plates realigning after years of pressure. I nodded slowly, a smile playing at my lips that didn't reach my eyes. You're right, kids are resilient. Excuse me. I found Jack and Emma in the living room, huddled together on the couch. Jack's face was blotchy from crying, and Emma had her arm around him protectively. They looked up when I entered, hope and hurt warring in their identical green eyes. Mom? Emma's voice was small. Are we in trouble? I knelt in front of them, taking their hands. No, sweetheart, you're not in trouble, but I need you both to do something for me. Go downstairs now and pack your backpacks with your most important things. Clothes for a few days, your favorite books, anything you can't leave behind. Jack's eyes widened. Are we going somewhere? Trust me, I said, squeezing their hands. We're going on an adventure. They exchanged glances, then nodded and headed toward the basement door. I heard my father's heavy footsteps behind me. What are you filling their heads with now? He demanded. I stood slowly, turning to face him. I'm teaching them their worth. Amanda, stop being ridiculous. No one's asking you to leave. No, I agreed, my voice calm. You're just asking my children to live in conditions you wouldn't accept for your dog, let alone your precious grandson. My mother appeared in the doorway, Ethan still on her hip. You're being unfair. We've opened our home to you, and I've paid rent, bought groceries, covered utilities, maintained the house, cared for you when Dad had his surgery last year. I listed each item with deliberate precision. I've been a tenant and a caregiver, not a charity case. That's not how family works, my mother protested. Exactly, I said. That's not how family works. The room fell silent except for Ethan's babbling. I could feel the shift in atmosphere, the dawning realization that I wasn't backing down this time. Stephen finally looked up from his phone, a frown creasing his forehead. You're seriously going to uproot your kids because you didn't get your way? He asked. I'm seriously going to protect my children from being treated as second-class citizens in what's supposed to be their home. Where will you even go? Melissa finally spoke, her voice carrying a hint of smugness. You can barely afford. My financial situation is none of your concern, I cut her off. Neither is where we go. What they didn't know was that I'd been planning this for months. Every extra shift, every foregone coffee, every packed lunch instead of cafeteria food had gone into my escape fund. I'd already been approved for a small apartment closer to the hospital. I'd been waiting for the right time, hoping to leave on good terms, to maintain family relationships for my children's sake. But sometimes the right time chooses itself. Jack and Emma reappeared with their backpacks, looking uncertain but trusting. I gathered them close, feeling their small bodies pressed against mine, drawing strength from their presence. Mom, Emma whispered, are we really leaving? Yes, baby, we're really leaving. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. If you walk out that door. You'll what? I asked quietly. Disown me. Treat me like I don't matter. Make my children feel unwelcome. I shook my head. You've already done all of that. I guided my children toward the door, pausing only to grab my purse and the folder of important documents I always kept in the front closet, birth certificates, social security cards, the divorce decree, habits from a marriage that had taught me to always be prepared to leave. You'll be back, my mother called out, her voice shaking with anger or shock. I couldn't tell which. You'll realize you're making a mistake. I turned at the door, my children's hands in mine. The only mistake I made was staying this long. The door closed behind us with a decisive click. In the driveway, I helped Jack and Emma into my 10-year-old Honda, their faces pale in the streetlight's glow. As I started the engine, Emma asked quietly, Where are we going, Mom? To Nancy's house tonight, I said, meeting their eyes in the rearview mirror. And tomorrow, We're going to see our new apartment. New apartment? Jack's voice held a mixture of fear and excitement. I've been saving, I admitted. I wanted it to be perfect before I told you, but perfect is overrated. Safe and loving is what matters. As we drove away, I didn't look back at the house where I'd grown up, where my children had spent 2 years learning they were less than. The weight that had pressed on my chest for months began to lift with each mile we put between us and that toxic dynamic. My phone buzzed incessantly, calls and texts from my parents, from Stephen. I ignored them all. Tomorrow would bring challenges, questions, and probably attempts at manipulation. But tonight my children and I were free. Nancy answered her door in pajamas, took one look at our faces, and ushered us in without questions. Guest room's ready, she said simply. Kids, there's hot chocolate in the kitchen if you want some. As Jack and Emma settled at Nancy's kitchen table, their hands wrapped around warm mugs, I heard Emma say to her brother, Mom was brave tonight, wasn't she? Yeah, Jack agreed, then added quietly, I didn't like the basement anyway. It smelled funny. That night, sharing Nancy's guest room with my children, I held them close and made a promise to them and to myself. We might not have much, but what we had would be ours. No conditions, no comparisons, no golden grandchildren to make them feel lesser. The next morning brought revelations I hadn't expected. Nancy had already spoken to her supervisor about my situation, and there was a possibility of switching to day shifts, which would align better with the kids' school schedule. The apartment I'd been approved for had a small program for single parents that included after-school care at a reduced rate. Why didn't you tell me things were so bad? Nancy asked over coffee while the kids ate breakfast. Pride, I admitted, and hoped that it would get better. Family's complicated, she agreed, but what they did? Amanda, that's abuse. The word hung heavy between us. Abuse, not physical, but emotional, psychological. The systematic devaluation of my children's worth. My phone showed 43 missed calls and dozens of messages. I scrolled through them during my break at work that day. You're being selfish. Mom, think about what you're doing to the family. Dad, stop being dramatic and come home. Stephen, the children need stability. Mom, you can't afford this on your own. Dad, that last one made me laugh bitterly. They had no idea what I could afford, what I'd sacrificed, what I'd saved. They'd never asked, just assumed. The apartment viewing that afternoon was a revelation for Jack and Emma. It was small, a 2-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor of an older building, but it had windows that opened, no mold, and a tiny balcony where Emma immediately declared, we could grow flowers. It's ours? Jack asked, his voice hushed with wonder. If you like it, I said. It's not fancy. It's perfect, Emma interrupted, spinning in the empty living room. Can we really live here? The property manager, Mrs. Chen, smiled at their enthusiasm. You can move in this weekend if you're ready. That evening, still staying at Nancy's, I finally returned one call to my mother. Are you ready to apologize? Were her first words. For what? I asked calmly. For causing this scene, for upsetting everyone. Stephen and Melissa are very hurt, and Jack and Emma. Are you concerned about them being hurt? A pause. They're fine. Children adapt. No, Mom, children survive. There's a difference, and my children won't just survive anymore. They're going to thrive. Without family support? With a family that actually supports them? I corrected. Me. She hung up. The move-in day was chaotic and perfect. Nancy recruited other nurses from our unit, and suddenly we had a brigade of helpers carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs. Someone brought pizza, another brought a plant for our balcony, and Dr. Chen himself appeared with a gift card to a furniture store, insisting it was a housewarming tradition. Jack and Emma arranged their shared room with military precision, debating the placement of every poster and book. When I apologized for them having to share, Emma hugged me tightly. Mom, we'd rather share a room in our home than have separate rooms where we're not wanted. That night, in our new apartment with boxes still stacked in corners and air mattresses for beds, we had a family meeting at our second-hand kitchen table. Things are going to be different now, I explained. Tighter budget. I'll be working more day shifts, which means less overtime pay. We'll have to be careful with money. Can we still do pizza Fridays? Jack asked anxiously. Once a month, I negotiated, and we'll learn to make our own pizza the other weeks. That sounds fun, Emma said, then hesitated. Mom, will we ever see Grandma and Grandpa again? I chose my words carefully. That door isn't closed forever. But right now, they need to understand that treating you as less important than Ethan isn't acceptable. You deserve better. Uncle Stephen always got the best stuff, Jack said quietly, even before Ethan. I know, baby, and I should have protected you from that sooner. I'm sorry. 3 weeks into our new life, the inevitable happened. My parents appeared at my work, causing a scene in the hospital lobby. Security had to intervene when my father's voice rose to shouting levels, demanding I stop this nonsense and come home. This is my workplace, I said quietly, aware of colleagues and patients watching. If you want to discuss this, we can meet somewhere appropriate. We're your parents, my mother cried. You can't just cut us off. I haven't cut you off. I've set boundaries. There's a difference. What boundaries? My father demanded. We gave you a home. You gave me conditional shelter where my children were treated as impositions while Stephen's child was treated as royalty. That's not a home. You're poisoning them against us, my mother accused. No, I'm protecting them from your poison. Dr. Chen appeared at my elbow, his presence authoritative. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is a hospital, not a venue for family disputes. After they left, he pulled me aside. Are you okay? I will be, I said, surprised to find I meant it. A month later, Stephen called. His approach was different, calculated, businesslike. This is affecting Mom and Dad's health, he said without preamble. Mom's blood pressure is up. Dad's not sleeping. I'm sorry to hear that, I said genuinely. They could try treating all their grandchildren equally. That might help. You're being petty. I'm being a mother. Something they seem to have forgotten how to be parents. What do you want, Amanda? An apology? Money? The assumption that this was about money was so perfectly Stephen. I want my children to be valued. I want them to have a room that isn't a health hazard. I want them to receive the same consideration as Ethan. That's not going to happen, he said bluntly. Ethan is different. He represents the future of the family. And Jack and Emma don't? You know what I mean. A son to carry on the family name, the family business. Jack is a son, I interrupted. He's just not your son, so he doesn't count. Silence. That's what I thought, I said, and hung up. 2 months into our new life, something shifted. Jack joined the school's robotics club, something he'd never felt confident enough to do before. Emma started violin lessons through a community program. Their grades improved. Their smiles came easier. I was working a day shift when Nancy found me. There's someone in the lobby asking for you. Says she's your mother. I found her sitting alone, looking older than I remembered. Without my father's bluster or Stephen's presence, she seemed diminished. I came to see where you're living, she said quietly. Why? Because I miss my grandchildren. You miss them. Or you miss having someone to compare unfavorably to Ethan. Her face crumpled slightly. That's not... We never meant... Yes, you did. Every decision you made meant exactly what it looked like. You chose Stephen's comfort over my children's health. You chose Ethan's nursery over their safety. The basement wasn't that bad. Mom, stop. Just stop. If it wasn't that bad, why didn't Ethan sleep there? She had no answer. I'll tell you what, I said finally. You can see the kids, but on our terms, at our apartment. And the first time you compare them to Ethan, the first time you make them feel less than, we're done. She nodded quickly. Can I come this weekend? Saturday, 2 hours. And Mom, don't bring Dad or Stephen. That visit was awkward but civil. My mother brought gifts, too expensive, overcompensating, but she listened when Emma talked about her violin and didn't interrupt when Jack explained his robotics project. Small steps. 3 months after we left, I received a certified letter, legal documentation from Stephen, suggesting I owed my parents for room and board during our stay. The amount was ridiculous, clearly inflated. I called Nancy's cousin, a family lawyer, who agreed to look at it pro bono. This is harassment, she said bluntly. You have rent receipts? Grocery bills? Everything, I confirmed. I'd learned to document everything during my divorce. Then, they have no case. This is just an intimidation tactic. I sent back a formal response through the lawyer, including copies of every rent payment, every grocery receipt, every utility bill I'd covered. The total was more than what they were claiming I owed. Stephen called within hours of receiving it. You're destroying this family, he accused. No, Stephen, I'm refusing to let you destroy my family. We are your family. Family doesn't sue family for protecting their children. He hung up. The legal threat disappeared. 6 months after our escape, I stood in our small apartment watching Jack and Emma do homework at our kitchen table. The space was tiny compared to my parents' house, but it was ours. No one could tell my children they didn't deserve to be here. My phone rang. My father. Your mother's in the hospital, he said without greeting. Heart palpitations. Stress-related, the doctor says. My stomach clenched. Despite everything, I still cared. Is she okay? She's stable. She's asking for you. I found her in a cardiac observation unit, looking fragile against the white sheets. My father sat beside her, his usual commanding presence subdued. Amanda? She whispered when she saw me. Mom, I've been thinking, she said slowly. About what you said, about the basement. I waited. We put Ethan in the main guest room because it was already set up as a nursery from when Stephen was born. It seemed logical. But you're right. We wouldn't have put him in the basement. It wasn't a full apology, but it was an acknowledgement. Your children, she continued. They deserve better than we gave them. Yes, I agreed simply. They do. Can we try again? Differently this time? I looked at my parents, really looked at them. They were older, frailer, clinging to outdated ideas of family hierarchy that had probably been passed down from their own parents. But there was something new in my mother's eyes, a recognition, perhaps, of what their favoritism had cost them. We can try, I said carefully. But the moment you make my children feel less than, we're done, permanently. They nodded. The rebuilding was slow, intentional. Supervised visits at neutral locations, gradual phone calls. My parents learning to ask about Jack and Emma's interests without comparing them to Ethan's milestones. 8 months after we left, my parents invited us to Thanksgiving. I almost declined, but Jack and Emma wanted to go. We're stronger now, Mom, Emma said with wisdom beyond her years. We know our worth. The dinner was carefully orchestrated. Stephen and his family were there, Ethan in a high chair between his parents. But this time, my parents had set places for Jack and Emma at the main table, not the kids' table in the kitchen. Small gestures, but noted. During dinner, my father cleared his throat. I want to say something, he announced. The table fell silent. Amanda, Jack, Emma, we've missed you, and we're sorry for not seeing what we were doing. Stephen shifted uncomfortably. Melissa studied her plate. Grandpa, Jack said quietly, we missed you too, but we couldn't stay in the basement. No, my father agreed, his voice rough. You couldn't. You shouldn't have had to. It wasn't perfect. Stephen still commanded more attention. Ethan still received more expensive gifts. But my children no longer noticed as much, secure in their own worth, in their own space, in their mother's fierce love. A year after that night when everything changed, I received a promotion at work. Pediatric ICU supervisor, day shift, better benefits. The raise meant we could move to a larger apartment in the same building, one where Jack and Emma could have their own rooms. Mom, we don't need our own rooms, Emma protested. We like sharing. Then share, I said, hugging them. But now you have the choice. They ended up taking the separate rooms but left the door between them open always. Choice. That's what I'd given them, the choice to be valued, to be safe, to be themselves without comparison. My mother called that evening. I heard about your promotion. Congratulations, thank you. We're proud of you, she said, then paused. I'm proud of you, for everything, for being stronger than we were. I learned from you, I said, surprising myself. I learned what not to do. That's still learning. She laughed, a sad but genuine sound. I suppose it is. 2 years after that night, I stood in my new apartment watching Jack's robotics team on a video call, planning their competition strategy. Emma was practicing violin in her room, the melody drifting through our space. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother, a photo of Ethan at a playground with the caption, "All our grandchildren are precious, all." It had taken 2 years for that word. I thought about responding, then decided to send a photo instead. Jack and Emma at the Science Museum last weekend, their faces lit with discovery and joy. No caption needed. Stephen and I maintained a cordial distance. He never apologized, never acknowledged the damage. But he also never again suggested my children deserved less. Sometimes that's all you can ask for, not reconciliation, but cessation of harm. 3 years after that night, Jack won a state robotics competition. Emma performed a violin solo at the City Youth Orchestra. Both grandparents attended both events, sitting beside me, cheering equally for both children. Not more than they would for Ethan, but not less either. Equal. It had taken 3 years for equal. After Emma's performance, my father pulled me aside. "I've been thinking about my will," he said awkwardly. "I want to make sure it's fair. All the grandchildren, equal shares." "Dad, I don't want. I know you don't want anything from us. You've made that clear. You've built everything yourself, but Jack and Emma deserve their share, equal to Ethan's." I nodded, throat tight. "Thank you. No, Amanda, thank you. For showing us what we were becoming, what we'd already become. It wasn't who we wanted to be." Looking back now, 5 years after that night, I can see the pattern clearly. My parents had been raised in a generation where sons mattered more, where the family name and business passed through male heirs. They'd unconsciously perpetuated what they'd learned, favoring Stephen not from malice but from ingrained tradition. But traditions can be broken, patterns can be changed. Sometimes it takes someone willing to stand up and say no more to break the cycle. Jack is in high school now, headed for engineering school with a partial scholarship he earned himself. Emma is considering medicine or music, possibly both. They're confident, secure young people who know their worth isn't determined by comparison to anyone else. They still see their grandparents regularly. The relationship is imperfect but real. My parents have learned to celebrate their achievements without qualification, to give gifts of equal value, to make space at the table, the real table, not the basement, for all their grandchildren. Stephen's marriage to Melissa ended 2 years ago. The renovation that was supposed to take 6 weeks had drained their savings, and the stress broke something that was probably already fractured. He lives in a small apartment now, not unlike mine. Ethan splits time between his parents, learning earlier than ideal that golden children can tarnish, that pedestals are unstable foundations for love. We have family dinners once a month now. All of us, including Stephen and Ethan. The dynamics are different, careful, intentional, but genuine. My children don't flinch when Ethan gets attention. They know their worth isn't diminished by someone else's light. "Mom," Emma asked me recently, "do you forgive them? Grandma and Grandpa?" I thought carefully before answering. I forgive them for not knowing better, but I don't forget what they did. Forgiveness doesn't mean accepting harmful behavior. It means releasing the anger so it doesn't poison you. And Uncle Stephen? "That's more complicated," I admitted. "He's never acknowledged what he did, but I don't carry anger for him either. Just distance. Some relationships are better with space." She nodded, understanding in a way that made me proud and sad. Proud that she could set boundaries, sad that she'd had to learn so young. The basement of my parents' house has been renovated now. Properly finished, waterproofed, climate-controlled. It's a beautiful family room where all the grandchildren play when we visit. But Jack and Emma never sleep there. That boundary remains firm. They are welcome guests in that house, but our apartment is home. Sometimes I drive past that house at night and remember standing in that kitchen, my mother holding Ethan while telling me my children could adapt to the basement. I remember the weight of that moment, the choice between accepting our designated place or demanding more. I chose more. Not more things, not more money, but more respect, more value. More love that didn't come with conditions or comparisons. My children learned that night that they didn't have to accept less than they deserved. That family isn't about blood or obligation, but about mutual respect and genuine care. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who claim to love you but treat you as disposable. They learned that their mother would choose them, always, even when it meant standing alone against everyone else. But mostly they learned their worth. And that lesson, that unshakable knowledge of their own value, is worth more than any inheritance, any family connection, any comfortable basement room in a house where they were never truly welcome. For the first time in my life, I understood that family isn't about maintaining peace at any cost. It's about protecting those who depend on you, even from those who share your blood. Especially from those who share your blood. They thought they could break us by showing us we didn't matter. They didn't realize they were actually showing us exactly how much we mattered. To each other, to ourselves, to the family we chose to build from the ashes of the one that tried to diminish us. We didn't win because we fought back. We won because we walked away. We won because we refused to let anyone else define our worth. We won because we chose ourselves. And in the end, that choice changed everything. End of story.